and let people come on in, and then we're going to go ahead and get started shortly. All right. Well, it's 1 o'clock and we are excited to have everyone back for our CELLebrate Henrietta Lacks Centennial conversation. We know we had hundreds of people who registered, and we know that this is an opportunity for you to join us live and talk with the Lacks family each month as we work to educate the next generation on the impact of Henrietta Lacks's life and legacy, one conversation at a time. This month is World Cancer Month that we're starting the Centennial conversation with as we enter Black History Month, which is exciting. So if you're just joining us, we're gonna just quickly do a couple of housekeeping updates, and then we're gonna go right into the conversation. And if you're watching on demand, thank you. And we have closed captions at the bottom as well. So today is a treat for me and our team here. We are just so excited to have Veronica Robinson. If you've been watching the Centennial Conversation series, you got a chance to see her and Pop and Alfred over the holidays. And we had a chance to have Veronica come back, and she's sitting down with Keysha Brooks-Coley from ACS CAN. And in Keysha's role, she's going to tell you a bit more about how she works as the Vice President of Federal Advocacy and Strategic Alliances. At the end of 2020, there was an amazing opportunity to make sure that Henrietta Lacks's legacy was honored. We could not think of anything more fitting on World Cancer Day than to uplift her legacy and to talk about how that legislation and honoring the work that she's done and her family has made an impact. So we would like to thank the ACS CAN team for all the work that they did to make sure that from 2019 into 2020, the legislation was actually passed, and we worked together through collaboration with the Lacks family and the Henrietta Lacks House of Healing, the Iris Collaborative, and Public Health Goals to put on our monthly conversation. So how can you join the conversation? There's a couple of ways, and if you are coming back, you know that we're going to have an opportunity for you to share questions or chat and share resources, because this is a conversation with our community. So feel free to share in the chat function, and if you have a question, please submit it in the question and answer box. If you're on Facebook Live, we'll be monitoring it as well, and you're welcome to share a question there. If you need help, feel free to email our team at impact@helo100.org. So, hi to the Facebook and Zoom people. I think we are now at about, 135 people strong. So we want to thank you for joining us on Zoom. If you're on Facebook, where sometimes the Lacks family members hang out, hey to you on Facebook, and hey to all the Lacks family members on Facebook. If you are watching this on demand on YouTube, or you'd like to subscribe to get all the updates as we move forward with future monthly Centennial conversations and content that we'll be developing led by the Lacks family, you can go ahead and follow us at CELLebrate Henrietta Lacks on YouTube. So for those of you that may not have heard the mission, CELLebrate Henrietta Lacks is an opportunity for the family to actually preserve the legacy of Henrietta Lacks, as we said before, by educating future generations on the impact of ourselves, but also through the lens of health equity and social justice. We know it's not enough to just talk about it. We've got to make those shifts through advocacy, systemic changes, and looking at empowering and supporting patients and their caregiving communities. And we know that the ACS community is a powerful network that all represents that demographic. So thank you, whether you're a caregiver, a friend, a patient, a survivor, a medavivor. Today is the day that we come together as a cancer community. So before I hand it over to Veronica, we're actually going to pause for a moment for reflection. And we just want the opportunity, if you'd like to wave or identify if you're anyone that's been impacted by cancer, you can share it in the chat or on Facebook, but we want to uplift and send light to those that have been impacted, and we'll take that moment now. Well, I see some hands being raised in the chat, and we stand with you. In my experience, I've been a navigator and I've been a caregiver as well. Veronica, well, I'm sure share a little bit more. She has been a caregiver to both her grandfather and her great-grandfather. And cancer has impacted their family more than just Henrietta Lacks. And so I think we all know that sometimes it can take its toll, but together we are able to work to fighting to make sure that cancer eventually doesn't take any more of our loved ones. So today I am honored to sit down with Veronica, and she is going to have an opportunity to talk more with Keysha Brooks-Coley. And I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Veronica so that she can introduce Keysha, because I know they're excited to get the conversation going. And if you've got a question, go ahead and share it in the chat or the Q&A. Veronica?
Hi, hello. Thank you so much, Sharia, for your warm welcome. And I'm honored to be here with Miss Keysha. As my family continue our journey to get recognition for our beloved matriarch, Henrietta Lacks, and her cell lines, also known as the HeLa cells, that led to countless medical discoveries and breakthroughs, we are proud and excited to take the lead in our own oral history by using our platforms to continue to take a seat at the table to discuss policies, access, STEM, and social justice. If you're interested in seeing where my family is today, please visit HeLa100.org as we celebrate my great-grandmother's centennial year that we kicked off last year, August the 1st of 2020. HeLa 100 is a family-led year-long centennial celebration. And what we basically do is we talk about Henrietta Lacks' incontestable impacts that she's had. If you would like to show your love to the mother of modern medicine while helping to advance equity, please check out our Purchase with a Purpose. And that's part of our Black History collection. So you'll see the cool, iconic t-shirts and things like that. Also, you can register for our upcoming conversations or revisit conversations that we had in the past, like the one that we're having now as well. And you can also join the Lacks family virtually in 2021 to celebrate Henrietta Lacks' Colloquium highlights. August the 1st, 2021 marked the culmination of a year-long HeLa 100 Henrietta Lacks Centennial celebration to honor her legacy and to join my family, world-renowned speakers, stakeholders, and influencers like Miss Keysha at virtual conferences and as we close out this historical occasion. Attendees will learn more about the worldwide advancements made by HeLa 100, the Centennial collaboration. So these are some of the things that I just wanted to make sure you guys know how to reach out to us. So again, go on HeLa 100 and just go through the page and see what the Lacks are doing and how you guys can collaborate with us. So today is World Cancer Day. And as we enter into Black History Month, we're excited to have Miss Keysha Brooks-Coley, Vice President of the Federal Advocacy Strategic Alliance, American Cancer Society, and Cancer Action Network Incorporation. Join us. Keysha has been honored as an African American trailblazer in politics and is a leader in cancer advocacy. How you doing, Miss Keysha? Thank you for being here.
I'm doing well, Veronica. Thanks for having me. I've been really looking forward to the conversation.
Oh, this is wonderful. So to start off, could you share what your role is and how you came to be a cancer advocate?
Sure. So I, as you mentioned, I'm Vice President for Federal Advocacy and Strategic Alliances with the American Cancer Society Cancer Action Network. ACS-CAN is the advocacy arm of the American Cancer Society. The work that I do every day and my team is focused on our federal advocacy engagement with Capitol Hill, with the administration and the executive branch, making sure that the voices of cancer patients are heard and making sure that public policy policy priorities that we are working on are moved forward at the federal government level. And to answer your question about how I became a cancer advocate, my background is in legislative and public policy work. I spent nearly a decade on Capitol Hill, working on both the House side and the Senate side before I moved over to work for ACS-CAN almost 13 years ago. And I had the pleasure of working on an extremely important program that made sure that individuals had access to screening if they didn't have insurance with the American Cancer Society Cancer Action Network while I was on the Hill, and decided that I wanted to be a cancer advocate, and have been doing it ever since.
Wow, that is amazing. So as you are working on Capitol Hill and you're getting to see policy and working with the American Cancer Society, like, what are the most pressing issues that you're working on to address these days?
Wow, yes, there are a lot of issues that need to be addressed, Veronica. And, honestly, coming out of 2020 with the issue around COVID that, of course, we're dealing with as a public health crisis, as well as health equity issues really being front and center. There are a lot of issues that we're dealing with that we're paying close attention to. One of the really important areas that we're focused on is around access to care, looking at prevention policy changes, as well as accelerating cures and treatments. And they're kind of broad bucket issues, but when you're looking at the needs of cancer patients throughout the continuum of their care, those issues are all really important issues. And really top of mind, the health disparities and health equity issues are top of mind for ACS and ACS-CAN. Especially now that the issues around health disparities and lack of coverage for minority populations that COVID really shined a light on. We are paying very close attention to those issues, and legislation like the Henrietta Lacks legislation allows us to keep talking about those issues.
Yeah, so just for all of you guys who are tuning in, we were talking about the legislation act that was just recently passed for my great grandmother and all the powerful people who were behind the scenes, being sure that this act get passed. That we're so excited about, and we would definitely like to thank our beloved friend who passed away, Mr. Elijah Cummins, who kept the family abreast, and he always gave us a seat at the table and empowered us to become advocates and to have conversations like this. And also we like to thank Senator Van Hollen. He actually called my grandfather, made him feel so special, like a rock star, just to tell him personally that the law has been passed. So I just want to let everyone know in advance that we thank everyone for all the behind the scene work that goes to, continuing the legacy and things like that. But Miss Keysha, I know that you led a lot of advocacy efforts for the Henrietta Lacks Enhancing Cancer Research Act. Which was recently, like we said, we was recently signed. Can you share why and how this work is making an impact on everybody in the world, or just your work?
Sure. So the law, since it's been signed now, is pretty straightforward, and it was drafted in that way, and it simply will require the Government Accountability Office that oftentimes does studies on really important issues to look at the barriers to patient access to clinical trials, and specifically looking at the barriers for minority patients to clinical trials. it's important to be able to have understanding of why. We know that individuals from minority backgrounds oftentimes don't participate in clinical trials. We have some understanding of why that's the case, but we really need to look at it in more detail, and that's what this study will do. And looking at clinical trials across the federal government, the NIH, the FDA, the Department of Defense, and not only really clearly identifying the barriers and the problems, which is important, but even more important is to then have recommendations for how we can look at policy change to make sure that we don't have to keep saying that minority individuals are underrepresented in clinical trials. We need to get to the place that that's no longer an issue. We know how important it is to have people from diverse backgrounds included in clinical trials so they can be tested, so that we can have an understanding of how different therapies and treatments impact them. And if we don't have diverse clinical trials, then we won't have that information. So that's what the legislation would do. And we're looking forward to that being really kind of a level set. It'll be the first time a study like that will have ever been done.
Yeah, my family learned throughout our own oral history that clinical trial access for underrepresented communities is vital to ending the disparities. And the Henrietta Lacks Enhanced Cancer Research Act, it aims to address that issue. So why is it important for advocates like myself to raise their voice and support removing the barriers that to clinical trials and innovations and treatments? Like, how do we bridge that gap? Like, where do you see this going?
So really important question. And, you know, I think one of the things that I'm just so grateful for you and your family for doing is for educating people. And educating lawmakers. And what our advocates found as we were working on this legislation to get it passed and lobbying members of Congress is that we were teaching thought leaders and policymakers about this issue and what the barriers are and what the solutions are potentially. And I think that what we need to continue to do and others need to continue to do is to look at these policy issues and think about their personal story. Whenever you're working on policy issues, a lot of times some policy issues are extremely wonky and very detailed, and people say, well, I don't know how to talk about this issue. I'm not an expert. But if you are a cancer advocate, if you've been a cancer patient or a survivor or a caregiver, and you can tell your story, then you can help us with advocacy work. And we like to tell our volunteers that we like to give them the words they need to be able to talk about these important issues and to be able to advocate for these important policy changes. So we need everybody's voice, everybody's voice.
Absolutely. My grandfather said, my great grandfather, Dave Lex used to say, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything.
Oh, very
So,
good. Very
this
true.
is so important for us to continue to use our platform to advocate in the community and have conversations with people like you, because this is the beginning, like having these conversations and keeping them going so that people can understand. In order to make an informed decision, you have to be educated. So let's continue our work in informing people,
Yes.
that there's we're trying to eliminate the devastating financial and human burdens of cancer and how it can be achieved without and how it cannot be achieved without the policies to address. We need government to step in and to review the policies to be held accountable to get more access. We also need to hold ourselves accountable. So, what role do you think policy can play on eliminating cancer and the health inequities?
Wow. Well, policy definitely has a role. When you look at health inequities, it feels like we're in a moment in time that we haven't been in before. When you look at the things that played out before us last year around COVID, racial inequity issues, we're poised to have a conversation about health equity and health disparities in a way where COVID showed us that access to care and access to coverage, there's not a level playing field. We knew that, but it became very apparent and right in front of our eyes. Individuals need access to health insurance. They need access to affordable quality coverage. If you look at it through the COVID lens, it became very clear that people needed to be able to get testing. People need to be able to get vaccines. And if you don't have coverage, how do you do that? So it is a policy issue that we have to address. I'll also speak about screening. One of the things that we're looking very close at both ACS and ACS CAN is looking at screening. And we know that people are not getting their cancer screenings right now because of everybody being home and just trying to stay safe, but that is a policy issue. And we need to make sure that from a disparity standpoint, people have access to life-saving preventative screenings. We know from the NCI that over 10,000 people will die over the next 10 years from breast cancer and colorectal cancer because they will not be doing the screenings that they should be because of everything that's going on with COVID. And the American Cancer Society has a new project that we are actually working on with the Centers for Disease Control called Back to Screening, and looking at how do we make sure from a public health standpoint we're having that conversation with the public. And then from the health disparities public policy position, ACS CAN will be engaging on making sure that there's more funding for programs that allow for individuals to have access to these life-saving screenings if they don't have the health insurance that they need. So I guess I would just close in saying that public policy really is the avenue to use to address many of the systemic issues that we know exist.
Yeah. So you speak on access a whole lot. What do you think the key factors in impactful patient advocacy efforts and partnerships? Can you share any example of how ACS-CAN partners to advance the fight against cancer? Like, what can we do to do our part?
Sure. So we work collaboratively on all of our issues, and I've mentioned access issues, and I'll bring up a topic that I haven't spent time on yet, and that's research. And you and your family know, of course, the importance of cancer research. And ACS CAN actually has a coalition of organizations that sit around a table and actually strategize on how we can advocate for increased funding for the National Institutes of Health, the National Cancer Institute, every year. We know that research funding is what is going to lead to the new treatments, to the new therapies, to the breakthrough therapies that individuals can have access to. And the work that we do that's collaborative is important because if I put my kind of former Capitol Hill staffer hat back on, there's so much noise. Staff and members of Congress hear from so many people every day in organizations about priorities that they want to be top of mind for them. And so you have to figure out how to break through the noise. And so doing that collaborative work is how you really do that successfully. So it's not just the American Cancer Society Cancer Action Network saying that the NCI budget needs to be increased. You have 50 or 60 organizations all saying the same thing and saying it collectively. And those organizations then leveraging their volunteers and their grassroots all saying the same thing. That gets attention. That gets members and staff's attention to say, wait, I keep hearing this over and over again from my constituents. This is important. So that's how we work collaboratively in a way that we've found to be extremely successful. And I would say that others who are interested in joining that type of work, you work with an organization like ours and others that advocate and join and kind of join with us to have those conversations.
Wow, I appreciate you saying all those things. And as we pivot from 2020 with learning so much about everything that has been happening to impact our year, 2021 so far has been exciting for the Lacks family. Patient advocacy have been exciting. Our priorities been equity, social justice, access STEM, and we're even more excited for our family's new family-led curriculum and just continuing our advocacies and using our platforms. Can you share your 2021 priorities and about what about this work that you're doing excites you?
Sure. So our 2021 at the priorities and work at the federal level, I've kind of touched on them a few times already, is focused on really working with the new administration, working with the 117th Congress. We have a new Congress, and being able to address those important issues around research and more funding for research, because we know that it's necessary. Advocating for policy change around those access to care issues, so people have access to affordable quality care and coverage. And also the health disparities work that needs to get done, and looking at how do we have policy change that impacts people who have cancer to make sure that they are receiving the care that they need, and that we're addressing disparities issues very laser focused. So those are a few areas, and clinical trials will remain a priority for us too. We've been able to get the Henrietta Lacks legislation passed. There's still more work that needs to be done on clinical trials, and we'll continue to lean in on those too. And there's other issues as well, but those are kind of some of the high level ones that take up a lot of our time and focus.
Yeah, so as you know, like in my family, like we're so big on trying to make sure that our story don't become someone else's stories, but unfortunately, our stories is a lot of stories of everyone who's watching today.
Right.
And you've said some things really good, and we have to continue to bridge these gaps and get people access, because we know that prevention is way better than cure. And we just have to begin to continue these partnerships and meet people where they are, where
That's
they
right.
live, they sleep, they pray, wherever it is. We have to reach out and try to make sure that we do our part as caregivers, as the people behind the scenes and things of that nature. So, I know that even in my role as an advocate, that I face so many challenges, and when it comes to being an advocate and what people and to when it become what roles when it become what people need. So what are your biggest challenges you face in your work, and how can people who's listening, people like me, how can we help, how can we stay involved?
Sure. So I think that I try to think of challenges and how you turn them to a strength. And I think one thing that we work to do all the time is to provide the patient voice in the work that we do. I can go up to Capitol Hill every day and have conversations with members and staff about our priorities, and people will listen. But having actual people come up and tell their stories, and talk about how having access to life-saving screening saved their life, or having access to coverage allowed them to get the treatments that they need, or how research funding was able to lead to a particular therapy that gave a patient a better quality of life. Those are the things that I would see as a potential challenge that and it's a strength though, that we turn into a strength to be able to use to advocate successfully. And I would say if there are people who want to figure out how do they do that work and how do they work, to have those conversations, I'd have to say, join an organization and work with an organization like ours, ACS CAN. ACS CAN is it's a strength. It's a powerful volunteer strength across the country. Our volunteers are amazing people. They're dedicated. We train them and make sure that they have the information they need to go and talk about these important policy changes. And it's exciting. And using your voice to be able to make policy change is huge. I think I shared with you before we started, Veronica, being able to go through the process at the end of the year to have the bill to move through the House and then move through the Senate and get signed by the president. It gave me goosebumps. I'm kind of a policy nerd, but but it was amazing to see an idea, which is what every piece of legislation is, turn into a reality of policy change. And something as simple as a report. Once that report is done, the work is not done. We'll be able to use it. We'll be able to make sure that that members in the administration and staff and members on Capitol Hill have that information about the barriers and the policy change solutions that are needed. And that's exciting. That's how you make real change. And that's why I wake up every day and do the work that I do, because it's exciting. It's exciting.
Wow, just hearing you speak about your passion and working for ACS I feel empowered. And I'm definitely going to check it out.
No, come and join us.
I'm holding you to that, okay?
Absolutely.
Because I take my role as an advocate so serious. And if you guys have the tools I need to be better, I am for it.
All right. Well, I'm going to be following up immediately.
Thank you so much. That's what we have to do these days. We have to hold each other accountable, and I love it. So let's stay empowered. So our family is honored to have leaders like you to empower us and to recognize our great-grandmother's impact. Because a scientist told me it was easier to say who has not used her cells versus who used her cells. And without her cells, we would be like in caveman time, still trying to invent the wheel. So she's definitely had a huge impact on the biotechnology community, like from in vitro fertilization to the polio vaccination, and her cells are still the golden cell line. They're still using her cells today. Can you tell us how you're honoring Henrietta Lacks during her centennial year?
Absolutely. And I touched on it already a little bit. I felt like it was meant for me to be able to work on the legislation, members of my team who have been working on the legislation. And when we started working on it, we had no idea that you all were celebrating your great-grandmother's 100, would have been her 100th birthday. But how amazing that the bill was able to get passed during that year. So I consider the work that I've been able to do up to this point as how I am celebrating that, and the continued work. We continue to talk about the law that passed. We continue to talk about this important report that will give us information and tools to be able to use to even look at even greater policy changes that may need to happen, that we need to work on. And I'm grateful for the opportunity, and want to thank you again, for you and your family, for the work that you've allowed us to do. And you mentioned former Congressman Elijah Cummings, who when we first started working with him, mentioned that he met with your family every year and was so excited to be able to talk to us about the legislation and what we wanted to do on cancer clinical trials, and say, we need to name this after Henrietta Lacks. And I remember when we first had that conversation and thought to myself, wow, what a great idea. We absolutely should, because her legacy will continue with that legislation and that law being passed, and we'll be able to just add new life to it every time we talk about it and educate more people about it.
Wow. And I just want to, again, thank you for your hard work and perseverance on this law. My family, we are so honored, and we just look forward to all the future collaborations with you. And please, like I said, hold me accountable. I'm looking forward to more collaborations and educating people in the community and getting them more informed and talking a lot more about policy and laws and things like that and how we can make a difference as people on the other end, on the other side of Federal Hill. Like, what's the last thing that you want to close with today? If you could tell everyone who's viewing from Facebook, from their Zoom, like, what's something impactful that you would want to close this out with?
So I'm just going to chime in really quick as we put up the poll to make sure that everybody else can chime in as well and share how they're celebrating Henrietta Lacks' legacy as well this year for her Centennial celebration. So as Keysha thinks about that response, we're going to just get a couple more people. 43% of you in Zoom have responded already. And we'll go ahead and just quickly talk about what we see, because this actually is information that we use as we talk about the next steps and identify partnerships and ways for the Lacks family to, as Veronica said, hold each other accountable, whether it be through education, working in community, making curriculum available, even tackling new things like COVID. So I see we're almost at the 60% mark. We're going to go ahead and give it a couple more seconds. And then if you didn't get a chance to submit your way of honoring her, you can actually visit HELA100.org, and we have a place where you can actually leave a note recognizing how her life has made an impact, maybe for you or your community. All right, so we're going to go ahead and close the poll. We have over 100 people that were able to respond. If you didn't get a chance to, don't forget, you can join us at HELA100.org. But we see there are a number of people that are going to start by learning about Henrietta's life. And there are a number of people that are going to learn more about the impact of the HeLa cells. And I'm excited to see there's more people that are going to learn about her life than the HeLa cells, because that was actually one of the goals of Henrietta Lacks' HeLa 100 celebration. We wanted to make sure that people knew she was a real woman, a wife, a mother, who lived and wasn't just a cell. So thank you for joining our effort to humanize her. I see the other big trend is incorporate Henrietta's story in my work, and then also share Henrietta's story on social media platforms. And that's actually what we accomplished this year, right? We had to go digital, but we know that we are greater than COVID, just like cancer is not going to hold us back, neither will COVID. So thank you again. I'm going to stop the poll, and I cannot wait to hear what Keysha has to say about her closing words.
Thank you. So I'll just end by saying that, you know, on this World Cancer Day and the 4th day of Black History Month 2021, as a mom who is always looking to be able to make sure that I'm making sure that my kids have an understanding of important people who have come before them and done amazing things, that Henrietta Lacks has a place there on that mantle of people that we need to be proud of and be grateful for what she did for modern medicine. And for what your family is doing for sharing her story. You didn't have to do what you're doing. You know I'm grateful for it. I know the organization I work with is grateful for it, and others are too. And would just say that I think we should just use this opportunity to talk about these important issues around health disparities, health equity, cancer issues, clinical trials issues, and work collaboratively to make change. That's how things get done. And just again, thank you so much for sitting down and talking with me. I've really enjoyed it. We joked before we started and said that we were just going to pretend like we were in having a conversation and no one was watching. And I think we pulled it off. So thank you, Veronica.
Well, this has been amazing. And for the people that have been watching, we've got some questions that came through. So we're going to go ahead and get started with a couple that already came over. And one of the questions was actually about how are Henrietta Lacks' cells being used today? So this will give Keysha a bit of a chance to take a quick breather, because Veronica gets this question quite a bit. And are there any other relatives with the HeLa cells?
Well, the HeLa cells are being used today. Like I said earlier, the HeLa cells are still considered the gold line of cells. And as of right now, I sit on the NIH, a board called the HeLa Genome Working Database Board. And what I get to do is I get to control the narrative by seeing some of the awesome research and work that's going by. And they're using her whole genome type, not just the cells, but the whole genome type, so that we can advance science and research by another 60 plus years. But like I said, it's been used in polio, in vitro fertilization. Um, it's being used currently for new medical discoveries, and just in general, like it's so many things that I could tell you that the HeLa cells are being used on that you guys would be like, oh my goodness, like this is a lot. But the most thing is if like I said, a scientist says easy to say who has not used them. So if you think about any research that's being done right now, currently, her cells are definitely being used.
Excellent. And if you want to go on HeLa100.org, if you click her story, you can actually see the full biography where the Lacks family has highlighted all of the impact that her cells have made by disease, by social issues, and the recognition that she's received. She just was inducted into the Hall of Fame at the end of last year for the Women's Hall of Fame, which was historic. And in addition, Veronica, the last question was about who in your family, or if anyone in your family has these cells. I know the answer, but a lot of people watching may not.
So, part of being on board for the NIH, we got a chance for Dr. Francis Collins to come down and tell us how it all works, like how our genome type and stuff work. As of right now, we don't know if anyone potentially will or do have her cell line. But her cells were very special because the reason why they continue to grow is because they're actually using the cancer cells. Those are the cells that continue to grow. And as of right now, I'm cancer free, and I'm, excited. And no, nobody else, not yet.
Excellent, Veronica. And there was another question that came in. So I'm going to go ahead. It was pre-submitted. So thank you to everybody that submitted questions when you registered. One of them was, can you tell us a little bit more about the lessons learned from her life and how your family is driving progressive and equitable policy change? So I think, definitely Keysha covered how ACS Can is driving it, but can you share a little bit more about how your family uses your platform?
Well, the curriculum, that's one big way, but we're advocates. We no longer want to be seat fillers in our own family's oral history. We are out here with you guys. We are researching on a daily basis and being educated so that we can make informed decisions, so that we can continue to educate the community. Um, Personally, for me, like every bit of partnership that I can so that I can continue to educate the community. That's basically what I'm out here doing. And I think we just have so many different family led initiatives and things that we're doing to stay empowered. And my great grandmother's story, how it has had a major impact on my family because, you know, especially in, not just my family, but it's impacted the Black and brown communities because these are historically stories that we hear about on a regular basis. Like we hear about we hear about Salks and the smallpox vaccinations. We hear about the Tuskegee syphilis studies. We hear about the Henrietta Lacks. We hear about the Trayvon Martins, and just a lot of things that has happened in society that has let us down. But we continue to just try to advocate for those stories, and we use our voice to say that these things aren't acceptable, and here's how you guys could be better and make better decisions. Just continuously educating yourself and not being afraid to ask or get the answers to questions and things like that. And, cancer has been a huge part of our story because that's where the story began. My great grandmother finding out that she had cancer. And throughout the years, I had to be a caregiver to my great grandfather who, Lacks, who had cancer. So it's impact our family in so many ways. So, like my cousin Alfred, he now have like the House of Healing Foundation, and we're just continuously trying to do our part in the community.
Excellent, Veronica. So one of the questions that just came through as well is actually about that same thing about the distrust in the community. And Veronica, at the end of last year and at the beginning of this year, had a chance to sit down and talk about what many of us have heard in the news around COVID hesitancy, COVID vaccine hesitancy. And this question is specific, though, to the healthcare industry. So it goes, because of Henrietta Lacks' story, others and others like her, many are distrustful of the healthcare industry. Can this be overcome?
I believe that this absolutely is something we can overcome. You know, in my family, we've learned that part of taking back our own our own history was to understand what happened, why it happened, and, make sure that we're holding ourselves and people accountable. And part of the way that we can overcome these things is we can start talking about these conversations, like the examples I gave you, like the Tuskegee syphilis studies and Henrietta Lacks. Like we should start having these conversations and acknowledge that why things that happen in the black and brown community is something that we live every day. It's just momentarily it's momentarily being screened to the world, but we go through this every day. So we can't keep sweeping these things under the rug. We have to acknowledge something happened. And then that's how we can begin to bridge these gaps and say, how do we move forward? Making sure that we get patient access, making sure that, we slow down as caregivers, because I also work on the other side, right? So now I'm a frontline worker, and I know that, when I come to a patient, like I'm in a lab, so we have products that the doctors use and test diagnoses and things like that with our panels. And we know that our job is never done, and not until the hospital get or facilities get the product. We know it's not done until the product is completely out of that facility. So we have to hold those same standards in life and just continuously saying that we have to be accountable. We have to continue conversations like the ones that we're having today with people like Miss Keysha, people who are taking themselves and saying, hey, I'm accountable, and let's push some of these legacies and these policies so that we can be better, we can do better, and we can begin to bridge that gap.
Thank you, Veronica. There's another question that came through, and I think this one is for you as well. It says, I worked in patient recruitment in a pharma company for many years, then cancer clinical development. Your story had so much impact on my life and my understanding of the importance of informed consent. I just want to say thank you. And thank you to you and your family for keeping Henrietta Lacks' story alive. Have others expressed how much this has made an impact on others involved in research? And this is interesting because you get this question a lot, and I guess I'll tag on another one. Do you get a lot of questions about how much your grandmother's story and cells have impacted them? But how do you feel she would feel if she was here today about her legacy? So that's a twofer for you.
Okay, so let me make sure I'm going to answer everything. If I didn't answer something, Sharia, please do put me back in my place. But I think if my great grandmother was here, how the legacy started, how her cells were taken, she probably would not be pleased. But because she knows, and I know that she's still with us today, because it feels like she's like the master narrator in this story. Like this is truly a story of divine intervention. I feel like she would be just so honored. Like if you've ever got a vaccination, Henrietta Lacks, if you've ever simply, if you wanted to be a mom and you couldn't be a mom and you had to get IVF, Henrietta Lacks. Polio was the AIDS epidemic of their time. And I say that because people didn't understand what polio was, but they didn't know it was affecting people in such a harsh way. Henrietta Lacks, like you can say that she has been the driving force and a major pioneer in a lot of medical discoveries and breakthroughs and things like that. Like, we're still educating ourselves on the whole everything that's happening with COVID, the vaccines and everything else. But I'm learning that she's even in the midst of research for that.
Excellent, Veronica. And one of the questions was also, and we know, right, you guys get this all the time, how her cells have impacted other people's lives. But I guess I'll ask you one that I know you and Alfred and your cousins like to answer often. When people come to you and tell you what it's meant and what's made a difference, are there certain stories or things that people say has made a difference that really stands out or makes you feel like all that you went through has been worth it, your family's journey? So what is those moments when people express how much the impact is made really meant to you?
It's when patients go through cancer treatment and I've had a story where someone had went through cancer treatment and she literally had finished up her last round of chemo. And I was speaking, I can't even remember where I was speaking at, but this was when the world was open. So I was speaking and she came to my speaking engagement because she knew that my family would be present and that we were speaking. And at the end of the engagement, she congratulated me on my advocacy role and she hugged me and she told me, thank you, because your grandmother's cells made it possible for me to receive this treatment and this happened and that happened. So when people come to us and they just share their stories and they hug us and they embrace us and they treat us like celebrities, like just to say thank you. And they acknowledge that, it was a mother, a wife, a great grandmother, a friend, a cousin on the other end of those cell lines. They're not just thanking you for the cells, they're thanking you for the life and the legacy of the person behind the cell. So that meant so much. And it continues, it means so much to us.
Exactly. And I would be remiss to not point out that Miss Keysha today is wearing Henrietta Lacks' favorite color. That's part of one of Halo 100 key initiatives. We invite people to honor her by wearing her favorite color or the color teal, which is color for cervical cancer awareness, which we know, she passed away from metastatic cervical cancer, but those cells have made an impact on all of us. So thank you, Ms. Keysha. And we would be remiss not to also say thank you. I saw Vivian from the Baltimore affiliate, the Baltimore ACS chapter has joined us, and she was there with the Lacks family when the World Health Organization actually globally took on cervical cancer because it's one of the cancers that we can actually eliminate. So we just want to say thank you to both of you and the teams that you've worked with that have continued to advance the Lacks family's priorities for cervical cancer and cancer this year. So we just got two more questions. We see that it says from Adeline Green, so many in the medical profession benefited financially from the HeLa cells. Oh yes. Has the Lacks family been the beneficiary of any of the millions of dollars that people made from your great-grandmother's cell research? So I think this is one for Veronica as well.
Okay, I like to take the time to let everyone know that that was a real good question. We get that question all the time, and the answer is we have never directly benefited from the usage of my great grandmother's cell line. Robert Hughes article went out on my great-grandmother's birthday, and Robert Hughes and other scientists wanted to help, and they wanted to stand in solidarity and say, well, hey, when we use the cells, we want to donate a portion of the money. And right now, it's going to a different foundation. And we have so many family-led initiatives. If you guys would like to see and continue our advocacy roles, I do want you guys to reach out to Halo100.org and see how you can directly help the Lacks family continue these initiatives.
Thank you, Veronica, and I appreciate your candor, because I know a lot of times when people read headlines, it's hard to follow. But the reality is that the Lacks family is still working to what the word would be reparations, or at least make sure that their seat at the table in some way does reflect some compensation. So there's no other questions that came through the Q&A here. I'm going to pause to see if there were any on Facebook. And if not, we're going to go ahead and wrap up, because we want to make sure that you have time to enjoy the rest of World Cancer Day. But we'll go ahead. If you have any other questions, this would be your final reminder. And then if not, we're going to see if she has closing remarks, and we thank you guys so much. All right, I did not, oh wait, hold on.
Uh-oh.
Oh no, this is one that okay, yep, here, sorry, it was delayed. Are they going to try to use her cells to cure COVID? So this is interesting, because we're actually doing, as Veronica said, more research on this, and they're going to be talking about this more later today. While her cells haven't been used to cure COVID, they have been used in the initial studies. So Veronica, is there anything else you want to highlight about how the cells have been used for COVID?
No, that actually was everything. It's only being used as of right now in the studies, and I'm excited to see, as I get to see the behind scenes at the NIH, people wanting to use the genome type to cure COVID.
Excellent. And the family will actually be developing, if you stay tuned, we just put out earlier this week, a coping with COVID-19 real talk with the Lacks family guide. So there's some tools for stress relief, and we're working on an infographic so you can share and educate your community on how the HeLa cells have impacted COVID-19. We know there's some molecular research and a couple of other initial things, but if you think of it, as Veronica said, it's easier to talk about what HeLa cells haven't contributed to. But in this case, it was the first step, but we know that the scientists have advanced it with other research as well. All right, well, I see a lot of thank yous coming in. I'm gonna go ahead and hand it back over to Veronica to close out with Ms. Keysha, and then we'll just share a couple of last updates for those of you that wanna know more about what's to come for HeLa 100. So Veronica?
So I want to thank everyone who has tuned in to hear the great advocacy work of Miss Keysha. Miss Keysha, thank you, thank you, thank you. My family is so honored for everything that you've done and you continue to do. And I look forward to our future partnership. And again, for everyone who's viewing, please continue to stay updated with the Lacks family at Halo100.org as we continue our family-led initiatives. And you'll see things on there like when we work with the World Health Organization to eliminate cervical cancer. And you can also follow one of the hashtags I just seen someone told me to follow. It's called the Teal Takeover. So continue to just do your part, stay informed, make educated decisions. And remember, as caregivers, when we're making these decisions, we have to consider the person on the other side. And part of that is my great-grandmother. She was the person on the other side of the cell. So we have to remember that as we do our work, that these patients aren't just specimens that become de-identified. There's are people, mothers, fathers, sisters, brothers, wives, and uncles. Miss Keysha, again, thank you for your time. And I'm just so honored to be in the same space as you.
Oh, thank you, Veronica, and thank you for making this a very memorable World Cancer Day. And I've enjoyed our time together, and I look forward to working with you and your family, continuing to work together to do this important work. Appreciate it.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and unspotlight our speakers so we can just share a couple of key closing points, everyone. If you had a chance to head over, and we saw some people did already, so thank you so much to Hilo100.org. We had a great Q&A session, but we also want to pause and again, thank the American Cancer Society, Cancer Action Network. If you want to learn more about their work, visit fightcancer.org. We are here in the DC and Baltimore area, so one day we hope we can safely give Keysha a very big hug. But until then, we'll all be fighting across the country and the globe to make sure that we can end cancer. As Veronica's shared, we are going to be having the 2021 virtual colloquium. We launched this year the Centennial celebration with a virtual celebration, and it was a great one. We opened with a panel. We had, as Veronica shared, Dr. Francis Collins, the author Rebecca Skloot. We had family members. We had Miss America. And a host of performances in the evening, and we brought it home with a little bit of a dance party as well. So we are excited to come back this year with another exciting format because again, we're greater than COVID. And we're gonna go ahead and let you know about how you can continue to support the family through the Purchase with Purpose. So if you're interested, the family just launched their Black History collection and you can visit Hilo100.org. Every single donation that's given with the Purchase with Purpose actually invests back into Henrietta Lacks' family to do this work and to make sure that they can continue their family-led initiative. So we thank you for all of those that supported today. And we want to just say, continue to join us on YouTube. If you subscribe, you'll get an automated notice. And if you'd like to join us next month, we're going to sit down and talk more about the COVID vaccine and how we can come together to cope with COVID. So again, have a wonderful World Cancer Day. And Veronica, did you want to say the closing goodbye? I'll mute myself and you can take us home.
Again, thank you guys for all tuning in. And if you've missed any part of today's talk with Miss Keysha, you can go back to Hilo100.org. And that's all. Thank you. Have a good day and enjoy the rest of your World Cancer Day.
Thank you so much. Everybody have a great afternoon and have a wonderful World Cancer Day. Together we will end cancer. Take care, everyone.